Hey everyone, this is Brian Marino with Apex Software, and in this video, we're going to join a training session in progress on using Photometrics. Before I get started, if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments section below. Also, if you know anyone who would be interested in this, feel free to like, share, and/or subscribe so you don't miss out on any updates. But with all of that out of the way, let's get into this training session in progress on using Photometrics. The goal for today is I'm going to kind of go over Photometrics. This is through version 7. So you're going to launch version 7 like you normally would, whether it be through Gamma or standalone. And then you would come up to the Photometrics tab. So if we have, let's say we have a blueprint or some type of aerial imagery that we want to use to trace in Photometrics to get our sketch, what we're going to do is come to the Photometrics tab. And once the Photometrics tab launches, if you click it, you're only going to have a load image option at first. If the module is not activated, you're going to get a window that tells you need to activate it first before you can use it. So we have a couple of ways to load an image. You can click load image right here and it'll bring up like the file explorer. You can find whatever image you want and you can load it. I'm going to open an image here. And this is kind of the way I do it. I usually take a screenshot if it's a PDF. So if you have a PDF, I'd recommend, if you're familiar with like holding down Windows and Shift and pressing S, you can take a screenshot. And once you take that screenshot, you can just paste it into Apex. So I'll actually use this image here. Imagine we did Windows Shift S, and I'm just going to do copy because Windows Shift S copies whatever you do to your clipboard, right? So once you copy the image, you can just come into Apex, right click and do paste, and it'll paste the image right into the background of Apex. So you don't necessarily have to use load image. I rarely use load image. I actually usually just either screenshot it or copy the image and paste it in like I just did here. But you can use load image if you prefer. So now that we have the image in, another tip, I recommend turn the grid off. I have my grid on right now. It kind of gets in the way of the image a little when you're zoomed out because you see all these lines and you can't really tell what goes with what. If you turn the grid off, it's really easy now to see these thin lines here. They were a little harder to see with the grid on because you didn't know what was the grid line and what was the other. Another tip I'd recommend, if you have the grid on, turn it off when you load an image. And that's just clicking this button down here at the bottom. So now that we have this image loaded, I'm going to go around it and I'm going to look for somewhere. We need to set our scale. So we need to tell Apex a distance of one of these walls. Once we tell it one of these distances, we're good to go. We don't really need to even look at the dimensions anymore. We can just kind of trace it like we would in the field, outside to outside. I like to set my scale with a whole number if possible, the biggest whole number I can find, or half foot. So like this is feet and inches. So like this would be 19 feet, 6 inches, which would be 19.5 in decimal feet, which is what you're probably using. But in this case, 15 is really easy here. So I'm going to use this 15 to set my scale. So I just went around and looked for a whole number to use to set my scale. And I found a 15 right here. Once we decide where we want to set our scale, I'm going to click the set scale button right here. And this is very important because this is going to make sure everything is right. So when I go to set scale, I get a crosshair as if I'm drawing. So what I'll usually do is I'll kind of zoom in on it as close as I can get it because you want to be super accurate here. I'm pretty close to on the line here. Shift, left arrow will go 1/10 of a foot at a time. I usually use my arrow keys to set my scale as well. So this is where I want to start. So I'm going to tap enter. Cursor will turn green just like if you're drawing. And then I'm just going to tap and hold my right arrow and bring it over to the other end. Now I'm slightly short and I'm going way past it. So I'm going to hold shift and do my right arrow till about right there. So now I'm perfectly aligned. And if you can kind of see in pink there, it says 51.2. So we're way off of the scale right now. It thinks that line is 51 feet. When I tap enter to place this, it's going to give me the 51 feet option here, but we need it to be 15. So I'm going to type in 15. And then when I OK this, if you keep an eye on that pink number, it dropped to 15 feet now. So now we are to scale with this blueprint. So we're ready to start tracing it at this point. So I'm going to click the pointer arrow and I'm going to kind of zoom out a little bit. And so 15 is from here to here. And this is very common on blueprints. If you have blueprints, they're measuring to the stud on the inside of the wall. Well, when you measure out in the field, you're measuring outside to outside. So this wall is not going to be 15 feet. It's probably going to be 15 and a half or close to 16 feet. Because if you look here, the 15 stops there and stops on this stud. Just keep that in mind that that's not exactly 15 feet for that wall. That's just from stud to stud. So from this point, I'm going to tap on draw area. And I'll zoom in. I like to zoom in on this too. And I'll kind of map my route. So I'm going to see I need to go over, down, and then follow this around and up. So I'm going to zoom in to make it easy to trace. I'll hold shift, get it close to the corner. tap enter, and then I'll arrow over. It'll follow me off screen. So I'm at 16 here. I'm going to shift back over. So we're at 15.7. So we're slightly over 15, but again, that's because of the wall thickness. So at this point, I'm going to tap enter, and now I'm going to move my way down. So I'm just tapping the down arrow. When I go off screen, it'll follow me. I'm going to keep going. I can see this wall's supposed to be 9 feet right there. So let's see how close we are. We're right on 9 feet there. So if we want, we can go ahead and tap enter here. If we really want to get down to the corner, we can hold shift, go down another 1/10. We're at 9.1. Again, if you're going whole numbers, there's nothing wrong with going to 9. So this one we're going past. So I'm going to hold shift and do my arrows. Right there, tap enter, go up, so shift. 2.3 is 2 feet 4 inches, so we're right on here. Move over to the right, 6 feet, we'll come down. I'm just gonna press B, mirror the first angle, since I know it comes back down the same distance. Then I'll tap my right arrow, follow me off screen. I'm gonna shift over a couple of tenths to about right there, tap enter. Then this is a 45, so I went 2 up, 2 right, but I bet you this is 3 feet just by looking at it, so I'm gonna tap 3 and press enter. It's actually further than 3 feet. We'll go 3.5. That's too far. We'll try 3.3. That's close enough. We'll go ahead and tap enter. And then we'll go over, come back, shift. Looks good there. I'll go ahead and tap B for bay window. It mirrored that next angle. And then I'll go over too far. So I'm just going to shift back, and then I'm going to work my way up. So remember when we first started, I was like, I'm going to map my route. I know I'll go here, and then I'm going to go up, right? So I'm going to kind of get here. And at this point, I'm going to hold shift and press C. What it did is it brought everything I had drawn into view. So I'm going to come over here. I'll shift right arrow about right there, tap enter, and then I'll work my way down. As I go down, it's going to follow me. I'm just going to keep going down. You'll notice here that this isn't perfectly square. I'm slightly off a little bit. I'm not too worried about that. You know, it'll make itself up on the other end. I'm trying to keep everything square here, really. So if you're slightly off like that, I wouldn't be too concerned about it. Go ahead and tap enter. Now I'll do Shift C, and we can see everything we've traced so far. All right, so I'm going to continue moving on. And at this point, I'm not super zoomed in. I'm going to go ahead and tap enter. I'm going to go back to my pointer and kind of zoom in about right there, and then go back into draw so that it makes it a little easier to see what I'm tracing. So then shift up, get it close, shift, get it close, shift down. So again, I'm just tracing the outside of it pretty much like I would if I was on site. Come back. And then I'm going to shift C because I think I'm getting close. Yeah. So now all I need to do is tap X and then tap A. And now the footprint is done, right? So from this point, usually what I'll do, I'll go in now to this garage. So you'll notice this doesn't match up. I'm not too worried about that either. I'm just going to square it off. So I'm going to go right here. I'm going to go straight up. Now, if you really want to, you could, you know, do that and draw from the inside of the garage because you want to give a little more square footage for the living area. You're going to knock out that wall thickness and include it with the living area. But whichever way you find to be the right way to do it. Again, we're not taking into account wall thickness. If we're keeping things square, I'm going to go straight up right here. So I'm going to go up, shift, get it close, go over, you know, shift over, enter. Now this storage, this is debatable. I'm going to include it with the garage because I don't care that it's a storage. It's a piece of the garage because it opens into the garage. So I'm going to go ahead and just draw this around. And if I want to add like an interior wall to carve this out, I can, or a text label or something. But otherwise, I'm going to draw it out like that. So all I did was draw this top wall, kept it square, and then followed it along this piece, and then got it aligned with this wall here. So when I define this, I can define it as garage. If I wanted to, I could, like I said, I could easily draw a line across here and define this separately as storage if I wanted to. But in this case, I'm going to leave it like it is. And then we'll shift C. So we see the garage is carved out. So now we have this patio. This patio, I will do the little bump here. So I'm going to just shift over, come up, get it close. Patios aren't super important. Then finally, this porch area down here. So what I usually do, I'll come down the wall, shift, get on the line, tap enter, come over 10 feet down. I'm not going to go around these columns. I'll go straight through them and then control up until I'm aligned, tap enter, one more enter. Now I can center and fit. So at this point, we have everything drawn. We have our 2 porches, our garage, and our first floor all drawn out. Now we need to define them and identify what they are. A couple of other things to point out up here at this top, this intensity. If your blueprint was too dark or light, you can actually darken it or lighten it here. So, you know, if you have a super dark blueprint, sometimes you can't even see your line. It's so dark. So you can adjust, you know, how dark or light that blueprint looks right up here. Usually you'll do that before you start. This just happened to be a good resolution that didn't affect what I was doing, just to point that out. Okay, so from this point, I'm going to go to define area, just like I normally would. So imagine you drew this without Photometrics. What would you do here? You would define your area. So I'm going to click this point. There's my whole first floor. Go ahead and define that. We'll select our garage, separate, apply that, porch, apply, patio, apply. And if you wanted to do the covered and the regular, you could have drawn a line straight across and defined two separate pieces here. Let me zoom in on this. You said you would usually go straight across right here. So I could do like insert vertex. Let's see if this will work. There we go. We separated two patios now, and then we can call this one. There we go. So we got a, well, it's a little hard to see here, but covered patio now, and then we have this patio. So once you get it drawn like this, under the Photometrics tab, we have a hide image option. So if you want to see it now without the blueprint behind it, hit hide image. There's your sketch. Our dimensions and things are a little small right now because we did set the scale. So we can always come in. Usually what I'll do, if I want to resize everything, I'll just go to select all. Let's change this to like a 26. That's definitely more legible. So you can easily resize stuff and clean it up. So from this point, you save like you normally would. So the only difference in anything you do is when you load the image, you need to set the scale and tell it what it is. Once you set the scale, you trace what you see. The way you draw has not changed at all. The way you defined has not changed. The way you save has not changed. The last thing to point out, under tools, options, you do have the ability to save the image you use with the sketch file. I would recommend not saving it. The only reason I'd say you'd want to save that, maybe you're doing like an apartment complex or something, and it's going to take you a week. Then save that image with it till you're done, and then remove it out. Because if not, it's going to bloat that file pretty big. I mean, our file sizes are small, 1, 2, 3, 4K. You put an image in it, we're talking 1 meg. There's nothing wrong with saving it, but I usually recommend strip that image out when you're done. And the way you can strip it out, under the Photometrics tab, remove image. That'll delete it from the sketch. So it's right here at the top. I'm going to re-add an image here. Let me just go to another page. Copy this image again. So you can, on this, I'm going to give you a few tips on setting this up. So if you wanted to rotate this image under the Photometrics tab, yes, you have rotate here. So I could rotate it around. Perfect. Or I could go to edit mode and I can just drag it, you know, like you do an area. So there are ways up here to rotate the image. Now, a better way to do that, let's say I got a blueprint that looked like this. It's at an angle, right? I can definitely draw that at an angle, but it would be easier to draw that if it was square on the page, right? So one of the tips in setting your scale, when you go to set scale, I'm going to set my scale on this wall, and I'm just going to make up the distance here, right? But what I want to show here, so it's 122. Let's say this should have been 80 feet. I'm going to do 80, but then I'm going to click vertical. And what that's going to do is when I hit OK, it's going to take that line and it's going to make it vertical. And now that's going to be way easier to trace. A lot of blueprints might be at an angle when you get them, or maybe they're scanned in and they aren't perfectly straight up and down on the page. When you set your scale, trace the line straight. And then when you tell it what the distance is, pick vertical, horizontal. You can also do something like Orient guide. Let's say I wanted this 45 to be straight. I can trace this and then come here and do vertical or horizontal. So let's say I want that horizontal. So it just rotated that one line horizontal. So I'll go back to Orient guide. I'll just trace a bottom wall and then I'll tell it make that horizontal and it'll rotate me back. When you get your blueprint, usually what I'll do too is I'll find where do I want to square it up at. Most of the lines are square over here and these come off at an angle. Let me square it up where most of the lines are square. And then I can deal with that angle later. So that's just some tips on like getting the image how you want it. So you can kind of play with that and see what works best for you, but it's there to help you square up the sketch, make it easier to draw, you know, straight up and down on your screen and left, right. So that's going to wrap things up. I hope everyone found this helpful. Again, if you have any comments, feel free to drop them in the comment section below. If you do know anyone who would be interested, feel free to like, share, and/or subscribe. Otherwise, thanks for watching. I'll catch y'all on the next one.